All right. Well, welcome back to Untangled. On today's episode, I have Diane Magers. She's one of the sharpest voices when it comes to connecting human-centered design with enterprise growth. Her work spans Fortune 500s, high growth teams, and executive coaching, always focused on making the experience a business discipline, not an afterthought. Thank you so much for joining us, Diane.
My pleasure to be here today. It's so wonderful to be able to spend time with you.
I'm excited too. Okay, so my audience is UX professionals usually. Okay, they are in a bunch of different places, either new to UX, in this thing, trying to figure out what to do next, or kind of like, where should we be going, right? So we'll cover a couple of different things if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
Well, let's start with the basics so they kind of understand your perspective and your background. Can you talk to us a little bit about experience strategy, what that is, and how you got into this space?
Yeah. I'll start with the experience strategy because I think one of the things that we want to get super clear about and doing any of our work is when we think about an experience strategy, it's who are your customers, who owns the strategy around your customers, and what are your goals for those customers? For example, who are your best customers? How do you get more of them? So typically when I ask executives about an experience strategy, they just look at me like I grew a third eye. So they're very familiar with UX. Yeah, they're like, what? Deer in the headlights. What do you mean? Well, I just say who owns the experience strategy, and they say, I don't know, sales or marketing, or they'll kind of point to everyone, but yet everybody owns it, but nobody owns it. So part of how I got into this space was I started as a clinical psychologist. So I've always studied human behavior, always been fascinated by what makes people tick. And I got out of that work and I went to work for an organization, and the CEO said, we're going to do everything to understand the customer, create great experiences. And that's how we're going to grow our business. And this was, mind you, in 1994, long time ago. But he just had the vision that if we created experiences that people would stay and they'd refer us and they'd buy more, which he was absolutely right. So when I think about the experience strategy, it's what is your approach to your customers and employees, and how does experience play a part in driving that business outcome?
Okay. So then was it that role? Actually, let me ask a better question. What was it called when you got started?
I was actually, I was in sales and marketing at that point, but I was customer feedback at that point. So I was going out and doing rides with, it was a logistics company. We did paper surveys back then. I was riding the trucks. I was visiting customers. I was really trying to gather that information to come back and put things in place that were going to improve the experience for them. Like, we didn't have very good reporting at all, actually. We didn't have a website for people to place orders electronically. So everybody had to call it in or give it to their rep. So by gathering that information, it was a way that I could then say, oh, we need to put X, Y, and Z in place by really deeply understanding it. And for your UX folks, you know how important that research is. You know how important it is to crawl into what people are doing every day and really understanding what they're trying to accomplish. So that kind of started the launch. Then when I moved to, it was Cisco Foods, when I moved to Cisco Corporate, we were part of an enterprise transformation team, 30 people from across the organization who came together, and our job was to implement SAP, draft all the processes, change the way we went to market, do value-based segmentation. It was everything in the organization. And it taught me a lot about business. And that's one of the key takeaways that I think when we think about what we do and trying to really design experiences and create great experiences, is we have to understand the business, all parts of the business, because everybody has a place and a piece of how experiences come together. So you might be in UX or you might be in experience management, or you might be in supply chain. Everybody's doing something that eventually shows up to the customer. So the ability for us to understand that and pull that into our designs is a critical part of how we drive business outcomes. So that's what I learned there, and that's where I started. So I was Senior Director of Customer Engagement at that point. So that's what we were calling it at that point.
Okay. I love to ask that question because people are like, it's UX. It has not always been UX. It's not always been CX. We have gone through several rounds of names. Uh,
Yes. Yes.
so can you help my audience understand, like, how does customer experience and experience strategy relate to UX as a discipline?
Absolutely. So in that same transformation, I love this story, and it was totally, my career's been all serendipity, by the way. So none of this was planned. Which, in fact, if I had just sat back and let it happen, and I didn't really chase some things down, things really came to me, because I think one of the things for you as UX professionals, I think if you demonstrate these traits that the organization is looking for, you're agile, you're human centered first, you're designing things for what their needs, you're telling your business case story around what that design did for the organization, you're going to win hearts and minds. And I think that's essentially when we think about what we need to do as UX professionals and experience management professionals. It's that we need to be the glue behind all of the things that are happening in order to really bring that human to bear, to say we can create all the products we want, but the experience they have with that product is what really drives business outcomes. Because lots of organizations are what we call inside out, right? They do everything inside and they don't really think about the customer. Most organizations now are saying, what does the customer need, want, and expect from us? And how do we meet those needs, rather than it being that inside out series. As UX professionals, when I was working at Cisco Foods, UX actually reported to me. So when I think about CX, it was one of the things back then, it was one of the things where we said it's all about the customer, and the employee and UX and all those other things are a component of that. Well, that's still true. But now what we find happening is customer experience is being elevated to more of a discipline, where we call it experience management. So guess what? Now we really own the whole experience strategy. It's all about who are our best customers. How are we aligning and collaborating around the entire journey, every touch point, making sure they're smooth and seamless, bringing information to bear. So I think when you talk about how those things fit together, UX is one component of it, but a really critical part, because it is what the customer sees and interacts with, that has become, literally in your hand every day, the way that customers perceive and think about you and get their jobs they're trying to do, get them accomplished.
Right.
So it's a very critical part of the whole experience. Very critical.
So I'm going to take a step and think and ask you about kind of your experience when trying to convince the C-suite, right? Like, to do this thing, to invest in experience strategy, to invest in that entire customer experience. What are some friction points or some kind of debates that you're having to have sometimes when you're trying to convince them to do this?
I probably, everybody's going to be nodding, anybody who's been in this space for a while, UX included. When I would talk to executives and they'd say, oh, you people who are designing experiences, you're just making it pretty. And, it kind of rubs us the wrong way, because it is not just about, yes, it's appeasing and aesthetically, showing up as the brand, but it's more about the functionality as well. And when it functions well, it is designed well, that people can get in and get out and get what they need to get done. The content is there, all the things we worry about all the time. Where I see us falling short, and this was my issue as well, is we weren't telling the business case story. We weren't defining the value of design. We weren't saying, because we made these changes, because we designed it this way, because we're bringing this content in, because we're using AI here, we're able to get the customer to their goal quicker, which means more revenue for us, lower cost to serve. If we're designing things right, people aren't calling. They're not getting broken experiences. They're not calling our care center, which increases cost. So I think we have been, and I was guilty of this as well, we weren't able to really tell the business case story around what seems to be what they would consider soft and fuzzy. But it's really because we're not talking their language. We're talking about net promoter. We're talking about research. We're talking about all these things that really don't have a tangible way for them to wrap their head around it. But when I start talking about increasing revenue, about days sales outstanding reductions, when we talk about reducing cost to serve, then the leadership starts listening. So we have to learn that language. I could do it. And as a clinical psychologist, I can tell you I wanted nothing to do with the business case. But I had to, because I worked for a logistics company who wanted to see pennies on the bottom line. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a muscle that we have to build as UX and CX professionals to be able to tell that story to leadership.
Are there any resources or recommendations you have on UX professionals learning that skill set and building that skill set?
I can tell you what worked for me. There are lots of resources out there. Several organizations have some around this, the value of design. If you go look up the value of design, just do a search, you'll find a lot of case studies about how organizations have done this. But what worked for me, I went to the CFO because I didn't know anything about how to build a business case. I went to the CFO and I sat with him and said, how do you build a business case at this organization? What are the elements that you look at? What do you watch? What are you looking for? How do the executives make decisions around here? Like, what do they prioritize? What's the model for doing that? By doing that, and also by educating him about why we were changing things and the impact that design and better experiences have that we can start to measure, he was very interested in, wow, we can add that to our bottom line. You mean our people are going to be more productive if we do that because we're getting them data quicker to respond to the customer? Double bonus. And so when we started having the conversation, I became very aware of how he built the business case. And I was sharing with him how I believed we were impacting the measures that the organization cared about. And so he was very willing to help me build that business case. And so I learned through talking with them, talking with the executives, doing interviews with the people that were my stakeholders to say, what are your goals for this year? And if I'm designing something that helps you achieve those goals, I should be able to tie myself to those. So I was also going to the leadership at that, senior VP level and directors to understand what their goals were, because then I could help them achieve that by creating better experiences and designing better interactions.
Yeah. So you have a book out. Make sure that I'm going to say all of the words. So the Experience Operating System and 8 keys to enable it. So can you tell us a little bit about the book and what can they find in it?
Yeah, it's very much the way the chapters are written around the 8 keys, which I can talk about in just a second, is we didn't want it to be another book that's like a long slog, a long read. So in most of the chapters that talk about the things that need to happen, those 8 keys that have to work together to build great experiences, we talk about what is it. So let's take customer understanding. Like, what is it? What does that mean? Why do you do it? What are the things that questions you need to ask? What are the pitfalls you should avoid? What are actions that you can take? We wanted to make it more of a recipe for people to understand what they needed to do. So that's one component of it. When you talk about the Experience Operating System, what we find is exactly what you were saying when UX people sometimes feel this way, is we're kind of the frosting on the cake, right? We're kind of making those things work, but we know that there's so much that goes into the information architecture and all the other things that need to happen that we can really drive outcomes from that. And what we're not doing is really trying to understand that needs to be part of just how we operate. So what I found with the UX team that started to report to me at my first role was they felt like they were in a box, like they could only do so much research, and they were then getting capabilities and requirements and building their wireframes and then trying to test it out. When in fact, we started to make sure that they were part of the research, like ethnographic research, going out and talking with customers, that they were in the journey mapping and design of the entire experience, not just the UX piece. So they had context and what was really relevant to the customer. So by expanding that role, we were able to bring them to bear. So operationally, making this just a part of everyday work was an important part of how experience management comes to life. Mm-hmm. I'll give you another example of that operationalization. That's a tough word. In our process for another organization, when we went through the stage gates, so when you actually go through the stage gate of doing your research, you might have preliminary design, you have low fidelity wireframes. Every time we went to those stages, we ensured that in the project management office and in our own internal processes, that we had very specific things we had to care for related to the experience. Where's the evidence? Where's the data that says this is a problem or we need to fix it? Where's the feedback that we've gotten as far as we're going to go launch this new app, for example? What is the customer going to do with this new app? Is it going to help them meet their goals? What value would they get for it? So we embedded these things in our design process because then we were accounting for that value. We were accounting for how the experience was going to show up, and it made it more real for the organization. It made us really demonstrate what we were doing for, whether it was employee or customer we were designing for, how we were caring for that experience.
Mm-hmm.
So the 8 keys then are a strategy, experience strategy, customer listening, alignment and accountability. So you think about silos work everywhere. Every organization has them, but customers don't care. Customers want to have a smooth experience across any of the touch points they have. There's also design, experience design, measures and metrics, processes, technology, and then this small thing called culture. So in those 8 things fitting together, we're trying to be the mortar between the bricks to bring all the pieces together. So the book is about how to go do that.
I love that. I love that. Culture is so important. So I mentor people and I tell them to look for culture when you're interviewing, right? Like ask those questions. Is that organization even open to this? Because if not, then that just makes a hard job harder, right? So that culture is so important. So important. Yes. Okay.
Yes. Interview them. Interview them is what I always say.
Absolutely.
You wouldn't move into an apartment complex or into an apartment with other people unless you really interview them and understand what you were getting into. Same thing.
So I say that, but I'm going to ask you this question because I don't know that my audience always believes me, right? So you have to interview people as well. So what are some questions that you ask when you interview or when you've interviewed in the past that help you really get an insight into what that company is and who those people are?
Oh, well, for my role, especially if you're in any experience part of it, is I ask them to tell me the top 3 goals that the organization has. And I don't mean revenue, cost goals, all the financial goals. Those are important too. But what I'm really digging for is if they mention the culture, if they mention their people, if they mention the customer, because if they don't bring that up in their goals, then you're probably going to be in the wrong place. Because fighting to get airtime around experience is hard enough. And when you don't have an organization that doesn't include it as part of their goals, it's woefully disappointing to be in an organization like that. That is very logistical. They'll say the words experience, but they don't really mean it. So I'd also ask questions like the evidence that they're caring for the customer. For example, do they have a team that's doing this? Or are they hiring you to do it? For example, where do they show for customers? What is in their annual report that shows they're actually listening to customers and doing something to improve it? Or is it just all voice? Going in and asking the head of HR, what are the things you do for employees and their experience? Not enabling them with like better information to do their job, but they're a customer of the brand as well. So what is their experience like? And how do you continually improve that? So you start to dig in just like you would if you were asking any organization as an experienced professional, what do you do? What's the evidence in that organization that tells you that either they are experience led or they really want to be, and they're willing to commit to it. That's the other piece. When we walk in and we want to be more about the experience, you're like, I don't know if you know what that means.
Right.
That's the hardest thing. That's the hardest thing for us is we have to do a little bit of sales job. I laugh when sometimes when people ask me what I do for a living, I want to tell them I'm a plumber. Okay. Because they have context for what that is. When I tell them I'm a chief experience officer, they say, I don't know what that is. What do you do? At first they think I'm in customer support.
Okay.
And then I have them actually tell me a story about an experience they've had. Okay. And invariably they tell me usually a bad story because they're trying to, they really want therapy. They'll say, here's what happened. Here's how I felt about it. Here's what I'm doing differently with the brand. And I say, well, there's nobody really caring for that. Who's listening to your feedback? Who's really fixing those things that are a problem for you? How do you want them to respond? Now, you now probably don't go back to that brand, right? And they're like, oh no. And I tell everybody else to stay away. I said, well, that's impact to the brand financially. You've just taken your customer lifetime value and walked out the door. And now you're telling other people not to go. Experience is about dollars. It's about value. And until they start to understand that, so then they go, oh, that's actually a job. You're like, yeah. So we have to be very purposeful about how we talk to people about our roles in the organization and tying it to value, because that's really what it is.
So you say plumber. I tell people I'm a therapist. I'm a company therapist.
There you go. Yeah. I'm a therapist and a dot connector. There's some days I feel like the mortar between the bricks. Let me tell you, it's a pressure cooker sometimes. But when you're thinking about experience, though, I used to say, in therapy, I was doing therapy one or a small group at a time. Now I'm doing it much, much broader.
Yeah.
Just really thinking about what people's lives are all about and how easy or effortless it is to do things and what we can make their lives better by doing that.
So I feel like you'll understand this question from a deep, deep place. But oftentimes when I'm talking to UX professionals, definitely people who've been doing this a long time, they're like, I'm just tired of having to sell UX or sell the value of research. I'm just tired, right? Can you give them some reasons why they're going to have to keep doing that, right? Why this is part of our job? Why do we have to keep selling the value of research or design?
I think it goes back to what I said earlier, that we're talking about selling, and we're trying to get the investment for what we do without telling the outcome story. So I can't tell me how many times I said, I need to go do research. Can I have money to go do it? And they're like, why do you need to do it? Well, I need this information so I can build something. But I wasn't taking them down the entire path of that. Like if I have this information and I truly understand the goals of this, let's say it's a segment of customers that are up and coming and high growth potential. If I understand that, I'm going to be able to build things that are experiences, products, UX, whatever it is. I'm going to be able to build things that help them achieve those goals, which turns into revenue, reduced cost to serve, better acquisition. Now they're like, oh, I need to give you money and now I get to see outcome from it. So we don't tell that story. We just go ask for money. We're like the little, orphan, like, can I have some more, please? We need to be able to tell, you're going to make an investment in this research. Here's what it's going to get you if we're able to put it to work. We need that information so we can do better at creating experiences that drive that outcome. We're just not telling the whole story. Right.
Okay. So let's talk about this one topic. You may have heard of it. AI, right?
What's that? What's that?
What is that? Right? Nobody's talking about that. It's everywhere, but nobody's talking about it. Let's talk about, because you and I had an interesting conversation about AI. You have a very interesting perspective that I love and I have been thinking about, right? So first, how do you think AI is going to impact CX, and if it's different, UX?
Well, two things. I remember our conversation, so I'll hark back to what you're saying. I think there's really two things. One, we need to ensure that we still start with the human. I see many, many organizations, experience management and UX and every other experience department you might think about, starting with the AI and what it can do and trying to find a place for it. And I think what we need to step back and say, hey, wait a minute, what's the human trying to accomplish and how do we enable it with technology? How do we enable it with what I call assisted intelligence, not artificial? It's coming from lots of different places. Some of it's coming from our customers, actually. We need to think about that first. So it's always human first. And I see so many organizations doing the same thing they did with social. They're rushing out there to get something out and it falls flat on its face. And you don't get a second chance with customers. So that's the first one. The second one, I think, from a AI standpoint is leveraging and thinking through This is going to change a lot of what we do. So you think about consent, you think about privacy, you think about building information on your customers and having these internal AIs that aren't external because everybody's worried about the privacy and intellectual property. How quickly we're going to have to adjust, because right now it's the wild, wild west. So we need to be informed, up to date, and consulting with our leaders about what AI should be and how it could be used and the cautions that we need to put in place around it. Because that's what's happening right now. People are making a lot of moves and things are going to be they're going to get tight pretty quick, because we need that structure. We need to be leading that. That's our role. We need to be leading the organization and how we should be leveraging it and where it's going to provide the most value.
I love that. We should be leading that. You said something that I say all the time, and I just want to hear your thoughts on this. You said you don't get a second chance with that customer. Let's talk through that, because I think a lot of times people, business units especially, think we can practice on people. So they do a whole bunch of A/B testing, not realizing in the wild, right? Not in like some nice little neat research package, but in the wild, you're A/B testing people, not realizing you may be losing them because they don't know that they're part of a test. So let's talk about how you've seen that play out. Like, how do you tell that story that you may not get a second chance at that apple?
No. And I think A/B testing is only one tiny portion of the way we should be being agile about how we develop. A/B testing to me is almost like surveys. So yes, we need feedback. Yes, surveys are important. Are they going to go away? Probably, because we're all going to just click on our video and give people feedback and send it. We've been so structured for so long in asking the questions we want to know. We are missing and trying to now get through text analytics and sentiment analysis really what the customer wants to talk to us about. I think it's the same thing with UX design. We come with our low fidelity. We kind of go through that. We show things and they're like, oh, it looks good. And we explain it. We get to A/B testing and we're looking for specific things we want to know, but we become a little biased to our own design. So letting your design into the wild is important, but you can do it in a safe way. Like my husband did this for his software company. He was the breaker. That's what they called him. And they would say, hey, we have this new thing we want you to test out. And they wouldn't give him any context for it. They just said, you're an X, Y, and Z, and you're trying to do this. And here's the things that we'd love to see you try to do. They watched him. They watched him pound on the keyboard with all fingers. They watched him try to struggle and look at what he was doing. They had him talk out loud about what he was seeing. Wait a second, I don't understand. Oh, that's over there. Oh, well, that doesn't make any sense. So they were really making it part of the life of his, even as a tester. That's what he was doing, because they kept him in the dark a little bit about what they were doing. So it wasn't leading the witness when they got to the A/B testing. And it wasn't having that biased approach to, we want the person to do this because we designed it this way. That's not how it works. That's not how it works at all. You've got to bring that out and go do ethnographic research, sit with somebody who's doing their work every day and watch where they put their Post-its and where they look and what they use, because that's how you're going to build something that they really need. And so I think we miss it at the beginning and we don't test because we're testing for what we want. Just like the surveys, we're asking our own questions and eat our own dog food, drinking our own champagne, a friend of mine says.
Other than doing a better job of connecting the dots and speaking like the business and tying it back, what do you wish CXers, UXers knew, right? What is something maybe even you wish you had learned earlier that has made the difference for you?
I wish I would have paid more attention to the change management. I think a lot of what we do is all about changing things for people, changing their lives. We change their environment. We change their interactions. We change the capabilities of what they're able to do and how they use their time. We're always in that constant change. And I think for employees and customers, they're getting a little bit of whiplash. didn't used to be like this 10 years ago. Things moved at a fairly slow pace, but now they're not. And they will continue to go at a faster and faster pace. So I even say, I wish I would have done that, even though I've been in this a long time, but anybody coming in now, that's a skill that we need to really bolster and make a competency that we have going into this, because it's humans and they're messy and they don't like change. We know when they don't like change, and we know when they do like change. What is going to be the difference, and why would they choose the brand that we're working for versus somebody else? So how do you understand where changes need to get made and then make them the right way?
In your opinion, what is good design? What is good UX design?
Well, I would say all the typical things like intuitive and easy to use and all those pieces. I think today, simplicity rules. I've seen a lot of design come and go. I've seen really heavy websites. I've seen complexity to the nth degree. And sometimes it has to be, depending on what your brand is. But I think the simpler, the better, because people are so pressed for time and because there's so much going on in their lives. The simpler and easier we can make it, the better. It's in my mind that should be the number one goal at this point, because people are just overwhelmed. They're just overwhelmed with so much.
Well, I'll ask a similar question around research. What does good research look like to you?
I think if you come back and you can talk about what that human is trying to do and what good means to them and what they need and want and expect from your brand, that's good research.
Okay. Talk to me about Amplify, the new company. Let's talk about that. So what is Amplify? What do y'all do there?
Amplify XM is an organization that we recognize that right now, every part of the organization has to be thinking about experience, product, supply chain, technology. UX has already been down that path. Our purpose in bringing together several thought leaders in this space of technology and education and learning and experience, all different kinds of experiences, data, analysis, all those things that come into play when we're really doing it well. By having that talent and the ability for us to advise organizations on, here's what's working, here's what's not working, here are the things that we can help you do, and really kind of teaching them to fish. The days of consulting and coming in and doing the work for someone are kind of over. And we believe that if you enable people with the right capabilities and competencies, that they can do this on their own, that they can get better and achieve their business goals with that help. So that's really what the organization is all about. We're here to help other organizations that are going through the same thing and struggling with all the things that we've talked about today, how you do that and how you do it well. We're helping them kind of get around the hard knocks that all of us have been through, because we've all been practitioners and we know how difficult the role is. But learning from that and sharing that and applying it to the organization and kind of starting where they are. Everybody comes in with kind of this experience strategy and starting the same way. We would rather come in and what's this problem you're trying to solve now? And then let's start to embed that experience operating system into what you're doing so that you can make it real and build it into the DNA. So that's
I'm gonna ask you to, because I would imagine people are wondering, why do you say that the days of going in and embedding yourself into a team or an organization are gone?
I think they're still there. I mean, we do a lot of fractional work where they were wanting to establish an experience management team, and we'll come in and do it. But our role isn't to be a part of that team. It's to build those competencies and capabilities, educate them, enable them, empower them to do it, because they need to be doing it on their own. If we come in and park ourselves somewhere, they're never going to build that competency, and it won't spread the way that it will if it's the people doing the work every day. They're bought in, they're committed, they're the ones who have the responsibility. And let's face it, sometimes coming into an organization and you're just working as another body in the organization doesn't help them build the capabilities that they need. So we have the capability ourselves to come in and do that work and help them really think about, your skill sets, your talent, that how you get the data to come together, how you start to get the organization to collaborate around the customer journey. You know, UX is kind of infamous for saying we're just going to do that front of glass, but they work with the architecture and back, but they don't tie themselves to the entire journey, right? They don't see if there's a problem with the website and that content isn't good, they're going to call care. Or they're going to go on to an AI chatbot who's not going to be able to respond to them. I've seen that happen a lot. Like they get frustrated there. They're already frustrated. Now they're with an AI chatbot that doesn't get it. That's got them in a circle. They're done with the brand. Yeah. So that's why we want to enable organizations to do it.
That's one of the things that I hope that when people interact with anything related to my brand, right, is it's about building relationships and coming out of that silo. Like researchers and designers, they want to be, they say we're introverted. I've never been able to own that title, but there are a lot of researchers who are introverted, but it's not just the things that we make, right? It's these connections that we make with people because we need that energy to spread, right? Can you talk about any best practices or whatever you've learned around building those connections, either in an organization or networking externally?
Networking externally, again, all by serendipity on my part. I started going to lots of events and found kind of my niche of the expertise happened to be around business value and design. Actually, those two things, which don't really fit well in a single brain, but by talking about those topics and then having people weigh in and finding my tribe, if you will, was very important. And not just my tribe, but also people who were, I guess, were challenging the way I'd always thought about things. This happened with one of my UX, couple of the UX team who said, you know what, we really think this experience management is a lot more than just UX. We want to learn more about how to do that. It helped me to understand that when somebody has a title or a job role, it doesn't mean they need to stay in that job role. It means that they want to be able to grow. They want to be able to understand all different parts of the business. And that makes a really good part of an organization, right? Not just an employee, but they are learning about how the organization works and makes them more valuable. So that's one way to do it. I think if I had to do it over again, I would have started taking people up on, hey, give me a call. I'm happy to walk you through this. I spent a lot of time mentoring because I was an early adopter of experience management, but I would have found my own board of directors, if you will. Mm-hmm. I would have found those people who I could go to and say, oh, I'm going down this road and I'm not sure it's right, or challenged with this. I needed to build my network. I needed to really find those people who could challenge me and keep me thinking about what I was doing and, you know, throw that bone in when things I was getting on the wheel and just doing the same thing. That really kind of took me down a new path. So that's how you build that network, by just opening up. You never know where a conversation is going to go. That's one of my t-shirts. You never know. Talk to everybody, because you just don't know who you're talking to and what you might learn from them and what you might be able to give to them.
I also tell people to be mindful of how you interact with other people as well, right? Because I haven't applied for a job in 20 years, right? I haven't had to. Not one that I didn't already know I had, right? I haven't done it. And part of that is because you talk about, you know, having champions and people who will speak on your behalf, right? And a job opens and they're like, I think I have somebody who will be perfect for that.
Yes.
People remember when you're a jerk to people, right? Even if you weren't a jerk to them. So being mindful of how you show up in front of people.
Yes, you're absolutely right. I think you never know when you're making a memory.
Yeah. I love that.
That was something. Yeah, that was something my husband and I had on our refrigerator when the kids, I have 4 kids, they're all grown now, but that was a phrase we kept on our refrigerator. And I started to realize it's really about life, because you never know when you make an impact to somebody, or you're able to reach out when they're struggling with something and giving them something that gets them to that next level. People remember that.
Yeah.
So you have to think
Diane,
about that in every interaction.
I was looking at your LinkedIn page. We've had a couple of discussions and you are like amazing. Okay.
Thank
You
you.
also look busy. So I tell people we can't just be busy. We have to be people. So outside of working and being a badass, like, what do you do for fun? What do you do to keep yourself balanced?
Oh my goodness. My kids keep me balanced and keep me on the roll. I have they're all of them are kind of artists. I wouldn't say they're formal artists, but lots of painting, lots of crafting. I have a quilter. I've got somebody who does cartooning. That's important to me. I have a new project coming along. I'm going to be a grandmother for the first time next month. So that'll be something that's new. And I read a lot. I listen to podcasts. I read. I try to make him, understand different perspectives through that too. Conversations are one thing, but I think there is so much great content out there, and people have so much to say. I want to listen. I want to listen more. I want to listen harder. That's kind of what it is. So reading's a big thing for me. Yeah.
That's the fun thing that I'm enjoying about having this Untangled podcast remix, right? Like, I just want to listen to you talk. I just want to learn from you. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about the idea of paying it forward. So what does that mean to you? What does that look like?
I remember in my career, my CEO I talked about at the very beginning was one of those people who truly inspired me. He made it important that we think more about the people that we work with and the people that we work for and what we do for them. Paying it forward to me is about the people who were there for me, meant so much to me. And even though I've thanked a lot of them and, made my their impact known to them, I also wanted to be able to do that for others. So I became very specifically a mentor to many people because I wanted to be able for them when they were struggling to be able to solve that problem, or just listening to, hey, talk it out, let's just talk it out. And that has probably been the most rewarding part, where it's fun for me. And I guess if I think about it now, it's a little bit back to the therapy that I started with. Now that I think about it, kind of come full circle, which helping people to really discover who they are and to grow and to see those light bulbs come on is such a cool thing for me. And I recognize that it's when I'm mentoring and when I'm talking with people and helping them to move forward, that's when the light bulbs come on. And that's just my thing. It's like, if I get somebody to have that moment of, oh, I never thought about it that way. Yeah, that's my day. We're done.
Yep, that's how you had me on the first conversation. I was like, because I'm like, everybody get out of UX. And you're like, no, wait, slow down. No, Adrienne, let's think about this another way. So I appreciate that. That's so awesome.
My pleasure.
Diane, I have truly enjoyed chatting with you today. Thank you so much for all of the nuggets of information. I'll make sure that we tag you so that people can be following you for content. But thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, too. It was beautiful to be with all of you today. And for those of you listening, pay it forward. Think about, you remember when you're making a memory, and go out there and learn more every day about the things that influence your work and how you can share what you're doing and how you're making the world a better place.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.